So I decided, instead of trying to draw blood from a stone, which is scouring the headlines,
find good news in politics.
Good news, which is not going to happen. I decided to go with some good news, which I consider more to be a perennial truth or persistent truth for the time being. In similar manner to Peter Hitchens, everything that I'm going to talk about in this segment is at threat. These are the things that I find beautiful and that I find that inspire love from me for the country that we live in, because England is still beautiful. Britain as a whole is still an incredibly beautiful place to live. Earlier on this year, for my birthday, I took a trip to Wales, and having not really driven around Wales before outside of the coastline, which is probably the most heavily built up, I had completely forgotten how much of Wales is still a very rural country. Yeah. It's all mountains and forests, and it was glorious. It was some of the most peaceful and relaxing time that I've had over the past few years. So there is still a lot to love in this country, in this nation. It is all under threat, as far as I can tell, from various different forces, from the government, from property development, from mass migration, etc. But for the time being, these are still things that we can hold on to and recognize as our own. For instance, I came across earlier this month this rather lovely example of the fact that high trust culture, the classic English culture, still exists in parts of the country, especially the more rural countryside, where people have these closed communities, these very close-knit communities where you can all trust one another and trust that if you do something like this. So for those listening, this is an image up of a country road where there is a box stationed at the side of the road that's full of Walker's crisps. It's got some water in it, some eggs even, some soft drinks. So it's there to set up so that people who are going for country walks, which is one of the most relaxing and fulfilling things that you can do, as far as I'm concerned, as someone who's often gone on a walk around the country, a nice ramble to pass the afternoon on a lazy day where you've not got anything to do. If you're going for a particularly long one, you might find that you're a bit peckish, a bit hungry, a bit thirsty, and they've left all of this there with a little sign attached to it saying water £1, cans £1, and there's a little box where you can leave the money in it.
Look, sorry to interrupt, but look at that comment just under. You call Lay's chips Walkers?
I hate American solipsism.
Oh,
don't all of the rest of the Europeans call it Lay's as well, though?
Yeah, but they're
that's
dumb.
A company, isn't it? It's a brand.
I don't know.
Walkers is a different brand.
It's all crisps to me.
Oh, is it? Right. Okay.
Yeah, but we're
John's voice emanated from below.
Yeah,
the fill us in on that one.
I say it. Go on. Sorry.
But I'm trying to give good news. I'm trying to talk about how high trust culture still exists.
That is a genuinely beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. Whether you like those crisps or sweets or not, it's wonderful that you can still go to parts of the country where you can trust that I can leave all of these snacks, this drinks, this water, and people won't nick it. People will...
People will pay the money and actually take the product and won't have to patrol them.
And nobody has to be there to enforce it. It's the trolley problem, except everybody knows the rules and everybody sticks to those rules because the English have...
Go back, John, go back. So this is why we must stop migration, right? Because
actually,
Mary has an article called the Death of the Honesty Box that talks about mass migration and how it can't...
anyone from any other country would just arrive here and be like...
Nick it.
Yeah.
Well, so the two places that I went to this year, Japan and
apart
the
from
States.
The Japanese, yeah.
Well, as well in Boston. No, not Boston. Massachusetts. I went to Cambridge. Not built up Boston, but the sort of Harvard area.
Yeah.
Very Anglo. They have honesty boxes. They have open take it and leave it libraries. It's funny how they've got all the progressive yard signs, but they live in an almost entirely affluent, white, high trust area. So the consequences of their policies never affect them. The Japanese, and I've said this before, they have vending machines on every corner. They're never vandalized. There's not an inch of graffiti. There's no homeless people there, which is very surprising. Not really, because they don't have...
They're all interned.
Well, they don't have addiction problems and nearly to the scale that we do. So,
Right.
But they have vending machines everywhere, absolutely no public bins, but no litter. And it's because people actually care enough about their area to pick up and take things with them. So it is about culture and consideration of the place that you live. And we had that once.
Well, even in the cities, we still had that. There was an excellent quote from, I always forget how to pronounce his name, Lee Kuan Yew, the Singaporean leader. After World War II, he visited London and saw how high trust it was, how everybody got along, everybody was very courteous and polite to one another. And he said, I will make Singapore like this place. London doesn't look like that anymore.
No, it doesn't.
Sadly, a lot of our major cities don't look like that anymore. But you can still find this beautiful culture, this wonderful culture out in the countryside, out in the rural spaces where people know each other, they like each other, and they know they can rely on one another. And it's a very beautiful thing. And it's a reminder that we do have deep history. We do have deep ties to this land. We built this country. And there are many things that you can look at that are reminders of that. And once again, it's the fact that they're reminders. What is the country doing at the moment other than wasting who knows how much untold money on HS2?
Just a quick thing as well on this. It's hard to understand just how many fortuitous events have to come together to make something like this possible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just a genuine sort of pyramid of history that ends in the honesty box that can just exist, and people pay their own money and take the thing that they want. And that just carries on. Like, there are so many prerequisite accomplishments civilizationally that is built on top of. And we look at it and go, oh, that's cute. But it's like, no, that's a genuine triumph of English civilization.
As far as I'm concerned, this is what I'm fighting for. The ability to have this, not just on country roads, but on the corner of every city, on the corner of every street, so that your neighborhood, your where you live can be as honest as this. Because compare this to footage that I've seen recently of in Tesco's in the larger cities, they've had to start putting everything in lockboxes to try and prevent people from stealing it.
Yeah, everything except the sunscreen.
Yeah.
And the Father's Day cards.
And compare it to the footage that you see coming out of San Francisco, where people
everything's in.
You'll get clown cars of people rushing into a shop and stealing everything. Compare it with the simple, quiet honesty of this.
Well, the extinction of the honesty box is downstream of the abolition of the conscience.
Well, that's the thing. It's not extinct yet.
Yeah.
So we should treasure it.
Yeah.
And like I say, we're always surrounded by the wonders that our civilization brought to us previously, like Cambridge. This is still here. We can still cherish all of this while it's still here. And I hope that it can carry on into the future in perpetuity. But it's in danger, but it's still here. Same with Lincoln. We're surrounded constantly, even in London, even parts of London, which we've just thrown to the ground and trashed a little bit, because yes, there are some major parts of London, like Brixton, which are very, very low trust. I wouldn't recommend going there. I always say it, but last time I went to Brixton, there was a robbery that happened right in front of me, and it was very worrying to be in, and I thought I was going to get stabbed.
My friend lived there this year, and he had multiple murders happen outside his doorstep.
Jesus.
That's what they've turned parts of London into. But this image, to me, sums up what London could be.
Yeah.
Could be if we can get, and used to be, and will be when we win. Because that's what we need to do. We need to stop thinking about, like everything's doom and gloom, everything is awful, everything is failing around us. There may be some truth to that, but there is also a certain truth that you can get by stepping out of your front door and exploring the world and exploring this country and reminding yourself that life goes on. Life goes on, and as long as the English people are still alive, as long as we're still here, England itself will survive in one form or the other. Even if even if mass migration kills 90%, just to go complete apocalypse scenario, kills 90% of the population out of pogroms, that 10%, if we hole up in somewhere, that somewhere will still be England, because we can create the honesty box again, because that's who we are. We are the people that live naturally. We naturally create the honesty box through our presence. That's how I see it. Yep, you've got Wells Cathedral, all of these wonderful things.
I like what this is being posted in comparison to as well. I saw this the other day.
Oh, yeah.
The child sacrifice in Peru, where they were carving open the chest of these kids. And in England, they were completing, Salisbury Cathedral or something.
This is Wells Cathedral.
Oh, Wells Cathedral.
It used to be painted really garish colours as well, didn't it?
I think all of the churches did back in the day, because I think it was the Victorians washed it all off because they didn't like it, because of the changing attitudes and stuff. But before the Victorians, as long as they were maintained, all of the churches and the architecture was very bright and vibrant.
It's a very medieval thing.
It is a very medieval thing.
Hollywood always portrays the Middle Ages as being like washed out and brown. It's like, no, they had color everywhere. It's horrific. Same as the ancient world. We're like, oh, look at these marble statues. Aren't they dignified? Not when they were in life. They weren't. They were gross, actually.
I think there's a certain beauty to it. I like...
There is, but they're really horrible, garish colors. Whenever you see the restoration, it's just like, ew.
Well, I'm not happy to consider that the entirety of human history before the 20th century was this incredibly grey, somber.
No, I'm not saying they're grey and somber.
I like to recognize that history was a very bright and vibrant and colourful place where people enjoyed themselves. Because if you believe what you see on the TV, you'd believe that people only learned to smile 50 years ago.
But the thing is, you've got to remember the generally a lot of things would have looked a lot more tacky.
Okay.
There's just like what you can look up some restorations of like ancient sculpture.
Authentic culture.
I'm not saying it's not
kind
authentic.
of tacky.
I'm not saying it's not. It's just that they aged well. Aged really well.
Can I also draw attention to the reply to this that says Mexicans built this 700 years before England even existed?
Oh wow, you built a rubbish triangle.
Right. Number one, I'm sure people are going to say, well, aliens built that instead. So who knows? Two,
Mexicans couldn't build this.
They definitely didn't build that 700 years.
That just looks like miserable brutalist architecture. And I'm pretty sure that there are the graves of infants buried somewhere underneath that. So yeah, I am going to say we're better.
I will say, from the sake of sheer monumental scale, this is still impressive.
Yeah, this is
still very impressive. I couldn't build anything like this myself.
I wouldn't want to.
Yeah, that's the thing. The eternal Anglo in me looks at it and goes, but why would I build it like this? Why wouldn't I make it pretty?
I just love the idea of going around ancient Mexicans. Like, look at this amazing building. Yeah, what's that for? Sacrificing children.
Yeah.
It's like,
we built the steps so you could perfectly kick a head down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, true. It would build momentum.
I don't think they're as old as what they're claiming. I'm pretty sure they're sort of like...
It's on the internet. It must be true.
Yeah. Anyway. And then we've got things like King Alfred's Tower.
Yeah, that's only from like the 1700s.
Still,
it's nice.
It's historical and it's beautiful. And it's in the middle of a field somewhere.
Yeah.
These are just the sorts of things that you can come across.
Yeah, I've seen
walking through England. And it's amazing and it's beautiful. And then some of my personal favourites that I always refer to, down in Cornwall, you have the Minack Theatre, which is a glorious amphitheatre cut into the side of the cliffs by the Romans. It's very, very old structure, and they still put performances on of plays. They might even do Shakespeare there. So I've never actually seen a performance there, but it's on my bucket list.
Have you ever been to an amphitheatre?
Yeah, I've been to an amphitheatre. I've been there.
Oh, really?
There wasn't any performances on when I was there, but it's glorious. Just the atmosphere, standing at the edge of the cliffs with the sea behind you. It was quite reminiscent of this shot, actually, where you could see the sunset and you could see the reflection on the water. It was glorious.
I've been to a bunch in Greece, and one of the things that is always remarkable is just genuinely how well the sound travels. Like, actually, you stand at the bottom, you just speak, and the person at the top can hear you really, really well. And so I don't know how they're designed.
Very well built.
Yeah, I don't know what the physics of it are, but they really do work.
And then also in Cornwall, there's St. Michael's Mount, which is a tiny little island with a castle on top of this hill where the walkway is submerged in water when the tide is high.
Oh, really?
Spirited Away.
Yeah, exactly. England and Britain in general is a magical fairy tale land. Yeah. And we forget about this because there are places like this where the tide sweeps over the walkway and it submerges it and there's no way of getting to it. But then when the tide is low, all of a sudden this magical pathway emerges and you can walk to the mystical fairy tale castle. I've been there. The castle itself is lovely. So it's a fantastic walk, a really, really nice day out. And if you live in this country and you haven't taken the time to explore it, you really should. Because like I say, there is a part of this that's tinged with some melancholy because these things are at threat. Everything in England is at threat. The English are at threat. But we are still here. And we can still take advantage of everything that this country has to offer because it is so fulfilling to really go and experience it and feel the history when you're in the area. Because there is an atmosphere when you go there where you drink it in. You drink it in and you go, my God, we are amazing.
Yeah.
we are really amazing.
And it's not just that, we've inherited things that are amazing. You know?
Yeah, and it's our duty to look after them,
Oh, yeah.
cause for
take care
gratitude.
of them. Yeah. And, well, bloody hell, no times I will not sign up for you. There we go. And you can find plenty of lists like this just on the Times, and it doesn't have to be architecture.
No,
it can be
no.
the natural landscape that we're surrounded by. I'm from Cheshire. Cheshire, to me, is possibly the most beautiful place in the world. I'm sure everyone will have different opinions on where it is, and it'll probably be more likely to be, well, no, actually, where I'm from in England is the most beautiful place in the world. That's fair as well, because the whole country is glorious. It's the magical fairy tale land, where Yorkshire moors, gorgeous, parts of Cumbria, especially.
I've never been to Cumbria, actually.
I went the Lake District earlier this year.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely go. It's magnificent. There is so much to explore, and we're still quite a small landmass.
Yeah.
Especially when compared to a massive continent like North America. But
When my kids are a bit older, I'm going to go to the Lake District. So it looks cool.
you can actually rent for about a week a decent, really nice cottages up there.
Really?
A decent price if you're booking far enough in advance.
Yeah, certainly.
Cumbria, Derbyshire, Bath,
Obviously the Bath.
obviously parts of the Cotswolds, which we're right next to.
I mean,
over here in
these
Wiltshire.
like this genuinely looks like Hobbiton.
It does.
Like, yeah, but you go there, you go around there, and it's genuinely like really old houses, and the doors are really low, the roofs are really low, and the whole thing just feels like it's just settled into the ground.
Well, Japan is still like this, so it proves that you can still do this in this day and age. You just have to
have
bring
the will
all
to
the
do it.
denizens of Mordor in at once.
Yeah.
On what you were saying a second ago, though, Carl, when I was still living in Nantwich, I lived in a Tudor house,
Yeah,
and I had to duck under
Yeah.
all of the doorways because they were all shorter back then.
yeah.
They weren't expecting that some 6'3" Nordic giant would be occupying the house.
But it's
So I had to be very careful not to knock my head, and I still did, which some people watching at home might go, oh, he knocked
That
his head a bit.
explains a lot of your
Yeah.
opinions.
Yeah, there you go. That's what they're probably saying.
But I mean, this is just such a beautiful Tolkien-esque fairy tale Hobbit land, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it's best to end it there, really, because that's what I wanted to remind everybody of, that we live in a fairy tale land. And while, yes, the fairy tale is quite dark at times, hopefully we can still have a happy ending with this.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go over to lotuseaters.com and check out the merch store. As you can see here, you could buy England Expects That Every Man Will Do His Duty sweaters. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.